Hey folks, good evening. Welcome to episode 5 of Tea and Type, your time to chill and make words. I'm MK England.
Hi everybody, I'm Jamie Pacton. Thanks for joining us today.
So we have some news for you guys. Jamie is going to tell us about a shiny new project we have to unveil today.
Yeah, so we were talking about things to do in the shows, and we have lots and lots of ideas, but one of the first things we want to do is do a start to finish mini-series. So we're going to go through the whole process of creating a novel, planning it, engineering it, drafting it, revising it. So hopefully an episode devoted to each one with some of our own processes that we've gone through in the past, what we're trying out now, and then also what we've learned from other writers we've read. So think about this as a virtual series of very helpful blog posts. So we're going to do probably at least 2 episodes every month will be a part of this series.
Yeah,
and yes,
I'm excited for it. We are going to kick off tonight by starting at the very, very beginning. How do you pick which idea you're going to work on? But before that, we have to do our usual.
What you drinking?
Yep. What you got, Jamie?
I am drinking chai because I'm working on new things tonight and I need to stay awake for a while. And I have to say, I saw a mug today that said coffee and chill, and I almost bought it, but it wasn't quite right. But I may go back and get it for exactly this show. So what about you? What fancy specialty tea are you having?
Yeah, you should definitely go back and buy that mug. I am drinking out of my mug that says tea on it. And I am drinking this really yummy jasmine tea that a student of mine got for me when I lived back in Atlantic City. Her name was Asha, and she got me this jasmine tea. And like flowery stuff is not normally my thing, but I actually find this one very soothing. So after a day spent in the revision cave, it's exactly what I need, I think.
There we go.
So I guess let's just dive into our topic, which is picking the next idea.
Yeah, and so before we do that, I actually think maybe we should take a moment and say where we're at. So you're in the revision cave. So maybe tell everybody what you're doing, and I'll say where I'm at, because then we're also kind of at the same time playing with new ideas. And I think maybe that's one important thing to say before we get started, is that there's no, for me at least, no clear beginning and end to a project. Like everything flows in the way that creativity does. So yeah, you're revising. Go ahead.
Yeah, that is absolutely the truest thing in the world for me. Anytime I have a lull in a project, and even sometimes in the middle of a project, infuriatingly enough, I will be thinking about the next idea, even when I shouldn't be, or sometimes especially when I shouldn't be. But for sure, anytime I'm in between rounds of revisions, I'm always thinking about the next idea, plotting something out. Right now, I am in my theoretically last round of revisions for the disasters. So I have a deadline next Friday the 15th. Woohoo! And so as soon as that is over, I have a vacation to go on. I'm ditching Jamie for a week. Sorry, Jamie. And then after that, I am coming back and diving right into the next project. What about you, Jamie?
And you already have those planned, right?
Well, we can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get there. I'm just a ridiculous human when it comes to my list of books. And so I actually finished a book up in May, early June, and that's what I'm querying right now. And so whenever I get done with a big book project, you've done months and months and perhaps years of like planning and thinking about a project, because I sometimes let things marinate and then I work on another thing. So I'm in that beautiful stage right now where I finally picked an idea, and now I'm researching that idea. And so I'm thinking about it obsessively. I took a drive last night to see a friend like an hour away, and I spent the whole time like listening to music and thinking about these two ideas that are kind of warring for my brain space. And I love that, right? So that's kind of an exciting spot to be at. I'm not actively producing anything quite yet. Well, I've got like 10 sentences for the new book. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. But I think some of our questions were like, how do you know when an idea is ready to go? So what about you? Like, you're a planner, super planner, right? So, but I mean, also it should be said, you have an amazing agent. So can you tell us maybe a little bit about how you find ideas, and then about how your agent kind of helps you with that?
Yeah, I think that process is actually still kind of evolving.
Yeah.
and I should probably actually have a more in-depth conversation with my agent about how we both want this process to go. You know, back at the beginning of the summer, and I should have known better because summer is my hell time as a YA librarian, but at the beginning of the summer, I wrote a sample chapter and a full synopsis for 3 different adult novel projects.
And they're all amazing.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. So I sent them all to my agent, and she said, you know, work on this one, focus on this one. And so I started to, and then, you know, as I do, I had like a major crisis over it and had to put it down and work on something else. So for that, you know, I was really struggling. I had these 3 ideas and I didn't know which one to work on. And so I sort of outsourced that decision to my agent. And jury is out on how that actually worked for me. And it was very, very different from when I chose the idea for the disasters and dove into that, because I knew what I was going to work on. It was my one idea that was very clear in my head. It was time for that idea, and it just like flew out.
And you talked in the past about your other, the tropey book. So with the disasters, like, how did you know it was time? Because you got that from some of your job, right? Your librarian job?
Actually, no. That one was a little strange. So the way I work, I have a Google Doc. I have a Google Doc that's just called the idea file. And anytime I have the barest scrap of an idea for a book, if it's like a 1-sentence pitch, if it's a line of dialogue, if it's just a scenario or something, you know, if it's just dragons in space or something like that, you know, that is not a premise for a novel. That is just like an idea seed. And so I just have a Google Doc full of all of these little seeds. And what'll usually happen for me is it'll eventually, one of those ideas will bump up against something in, you know, the media I'm consuming, whether it's a book I'm reading or a movie I've gone to see or something like that. I need to see more movies because I've fixed a lot of book problems through movies. The Disasters actually was born when I went to see Guardians of the Galaxy in the theater for the first time. I had already had in my idea file, like, loser kid gets kicked out of Space Academy, and he's a hotshot pilot. That was like the extent of the Disasters in its earliest days. And then I went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and something in the tone of that movie set it off for me. And instantly I had the voice for Nax. I knew where it was going. And I think for me, I know an idea is ready when I have the character voice in my head. You know, I can do all the plotting in the world, and I have done this before. I plotted out an entire novel and then sat down to write it. And because I didn't have that character voice ready to go, I just it was a slog fest for 20,000 words. And then I just abandoned the whole thing because it wasn't ready. It just wasn't ready. So that's my benchmark for is an idea ready to go, and it's do I have the character voice? What about you? Do you have a moment like that?
I do, but for me, I have these little moments of insight sometimes when I bump up against media or when I bump up against the world or things like that. So the book that I'm querying right now, it's called 21 Karat Girls, and when I wrote a book about Marco Polo, that was my Pitch Wars book, and in all my Marco Polo research, I find this tiny little tidbit about how there were contests for concubines, and they were rated according to a system of carats, and the highest honor was to become a concubine, and if you got 21 carats or higher, then you had the privilege of becoming a concubine. So for me, I read this, I was in the middle of like a 600-page biography, and it was probably 4 sentences long, and I read it and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I'm the kind of girl that, like, if there's something she wants to buy, rugs, shoes, dog, whatever, I can't stop thinking about it. Like, it's been a problem. But as a writer, it's a great thing because I worry these things. And so eventually, like, it took me a year or two to find the story from that tidbit. And then it took me a little bit longer to write it. But when I did, I was so thrilled. And the book I'm working on now is similar to that. it came from an art exhibition I saw back in 2012, and there was a tiny little fun fact on a placard in the middle of the exhibit that caught my attention, like these 3 sentences. And I've been thinking about this story, well, I've been thinking about these characters or this little fun fact. So my idea file is in my head and sort of scattered on my computer. You're more organized than I am.
That's terrifying to me. Like, what if you forget?
Well, but you see, I won't forget because I think about it so much all the time. The only real problem I have is starting, like figuring out which one to go with next. Because I was talking to a writer we know the other day, and she said that her ideas are hard. I mean, it's hard for her to come up with ideas. They're slow. I have the opposite problem. I have too many. So I actually have an idea for an adult book right now. The book that I'm querying, I would love to write more books in that world. And then I've got this new YA, and then I've actually got an early reader series that won't leave me alone, And so my biggest problem is when I sit down to write, what do I do next? And for me, it's not, I hear you on the character kind of thing, because that's what I'm waiting on right now. I'm waiting to hear the voice of one of these characters. But for me, I have to sometimes be a bit more deliberate and say, it is time to start this book. And if I have to force, the first 5,000 words, then we'll get to everything else, or I just start writing in that world and then the voice evolves. But I do have lists and notebooks and spreadsheets and all of those kinds of things. And I feel very grateful because I've worked my way through 5 of my books on my ongoing list, and I've still got like 5 to 10 more. But
that's
yeah.
awesome. Really.
Yeah.
I think, one of the reasons I need to externalize my idea list is because sometimes when I'm feeling really uncreative, or when I'm feeling like I don't know what the next idea is and I need to be thinking about it, I can just open up that document and read through all of them and see if something kind of jumps out at me.
I think
nothing
that's fair.
comes of it most of the time, but it's good to have it there. And I think one of the things that has sort of come out of this discussion is the importance of experiencing creativity in other mediums. You got an idea from going to a museum. I got one from, going to the movies. I think it's just so important. Like, sometimes we feel lazy when we take time off to read for fun or to binge watch a Netflix show or whatever else. But like, that can be a really integral part of the creative process and the process of developing an idea.
Also, storytelling. I think it's important. Right? You're learning about storytelling. You think about like watching, absolutely take a month of your life and watch all of Breaking Bad, right? Because the storytelling and the character development is phenomenal, and you can learn so much as a writer from like what they choose to present, the scenes they choose to show you. Same, you just have to, so I talk about this in the classes I teach, like everything, if you start to see it, I know we're kind of running on time, but a little extra, everything is a deliberate choice. Somebody, the writer, the writers, the actors, they make choices in how they present things. And so I think if you're paying attention to that as you move through the world and as you consume media, and you're saying to yourself, what is the storytelling choice? I just watched Inglourious Bastards again, and there's so many interesting choices made in that movie, and that's one reason it's so powerful. And then there's also, the Tarantino signature stamps and the music, and then there are the monologues and things like that. I could talk all day about that. Yeah. But it's exciting to say that, yes, other media can feed your creative process. I will tell you one thing, too, and I'm sorry, I'll stop talking in just a minute. One thing I do if I'm just bored with my list or something, I will actually go to the manuscript wish list, the one that agents and editors and stuff, they all say this is what we want or what we're looking for, and not necessarily with an eye towards crafting a certain book, to a certain editor or something, but just to kind of see what the vibe is right now. What are people looking for? What kind of stories are interesting? And from there, even recently I've seen things like, we want magic that's not based on a system of blood. It's based on a system of skill. Or instead of, this question of will they get together, we want to see a couple, like a teen couple that's already together and they stay together. And that's not, the entire plot of the book. And so for me, I find that a very rich way to get ideas and also to kind of work through some of the things I already have. So if I just start with a concept, then I can say, well, what if I tried it this way? Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think the last thing that I would say about this topic, just to kind of put a bow on it, is that this process definitely changes a little bit once, you are under contract, or you are, actively putting books out into the world, and suddenly you have demands on you and you need to create a new book in a certain amount of time. You don't have the luxury of kind of waiting around for an idea to strike you. And so I think there are, what you were saying earlier about just sitting down and kind of writing in the world a little bit, or like really deliberately choosing an idea and choosing to pursue media to refill the well with that idea in mind. I think at some point you do sort of have to switch to a more active mode of idea seeking and idea building. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think I have my next project in mind that I'm going to try and be ridiculous and get it out really, really fast once I get back from vacation. And that's going to be my mode. As soon as I finish this revision, that's where I'm going to be at. I'm going to be actively cultivating this idea, which is going to be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to it.
Two more things real fast.
Yeah, sure.
If you read Stephen King's On Writing, right, he always starts out many of his books with a question, like what would happen if, a rabid fan kidnapped a writer, and then misery arose out of that, and so I think that's a very productive way too, if you're just starting out or you're looking for the right idea or something, like which questions intrigue you, or, if you combine these two things, not just in a way of like, this is Six of Crows meets Wonder Woman or whatever. That's fabulous. But I'd read that in a minute. But just, what questions, can arise. And so I think that's a good way to get yourself out of an idea rut too. If you just can't think of something, start asking questions, put it together, plop it into a world and see what arises. And then, what he did, he always wrote his shitty first draft, as he calls it in the book. 5,000 words a day, which I cannot do with the demands of my life. But if you do that, like, you're getting through books quickly. I think V.E. Schwab does that too. And that's one reason she has so many books out. And I did want to say about her too, one thing I thought was smart that I wanted to mention in this episode. I remember her saying once that she writes a middle grade book, a young adult book, and then an adult book. And so she's always working on the next thing, and she knows what the next thing is, but it's in a different genre, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a smart strategy too. So I think you can be deliberate about this as well.
Yes, I have my little V.E. Schwab always be writing sticky note on the front of my computer there. So that about does it for our topic this week. If you have more things you want to hear us talk about in the future, you can always send us an email at ttypewrite@gmail.com. If you have things you want to hear about in the Project Start to Finish series, please do let us know. You can also use hashtag AskTNType on Twitter. We are going to be working on some sprints today, just like usual. We're going to be doing one long sprint instead of two small sprints today, just to change it up and see how it goes. So do let us know what you think about that. And also, we have some query critique winners. We did a little giveaway on Twitter because we are trying to build up our subscribers for this channel so that we can get a custom URL instead of like, youtube.com/blah, blah, 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 blah. So we are most of the way there. So please do remember to subscribe today. And our query winners are Kelly, that's K Barina 113. And we have Elizabeth Zane, who is by Elizabeth Zane on Twitter. So congratulations to the two of you. Please make sure you're following me so that I can DM you after the show is over today. And I'll let you know how to get us your materials for the query critique. And we got to recommend a thing.
Work on those, right?
You recommend this week, Jamie?
Oh, what do I recommend? Hey, I'm so excited about this. I am reading Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dowd, former Pitch Wars mentor. And I am using her adorable little compact. What?
Oh, that's so cool. That's giveaway swag.
Good flag, right? Yeah, it's a full book, and it comes out, let's see, October. So I'm a little bit early in the art. I've got the art, but I'm excited for this one to get released. So what about you?
Mm-hmm. I've got two things to mention. The first one I totally forgot to actually put next to my computer, so you're just going to have to use your brain to imagine it. It's called Nixia by Scott Rankin, which is not at all spelled like you would think. But look it up. It's NYXIA. It's a new YA sci-fi that's coming out like next week. I think I'm the last stop on the ARC tour. It's fabulous so far. Really exciting. So give that a read. And we also have to give a shout out to our Pitch Wars 15 bud. Alan Cole is Not a Coward by Eric Bell is coming out tomorrow. This is a really sweet LGBT middle grade novel. You gotta. It's the cutest, guys. So check that out. Please do.
I think it's a pretty important book, too. It's sweet, but it's also a very important book for middle grade. And yes, we're very excited.
I think it's very needed. And it's also just a fabulous story and funny. So give it a shot. Go check that out. Go pre-order. You still have time to do that. And we are going to sign off and hop over on Twitter to get working. This has been Tea and Type. Let's
see
go
you
make
next
some
week, guys.
words together. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.